Hey, this week we've got a really good series of lessons all coming out of one story from my wife and some of her experiences and her practice this year. So buckle up. I'll try to make it succinct, but there are a lot of good takeaways in this one, and you'll want to kind of pay attention for reducing your own anxiety. I mean, much of what we all struggle with on a day-to-day basis is between our ears for the most part. So managing between the ears, realizing that perception is not always reality, and then taking steps in your professional actions and words that will both reduce your risk, reduce your anxiety, and help you sleep a little bit better at night, literally. And so this is a real story. Um, Earlier this week, my wife came into my office and she was a little bit down. And I said, "What's happening?" And so she relayed to me a story where she's had a patient for a couple of years who's had colitis. And um, recently she had a flare. And the things that she had been doing, the interventions she had been using in her functional medicine office, weren't working this time. So she recognized that it was time to refer her to gastro for a workup, a conventional workup. Now, um, that is fine. That's the proper thing to do, and she recognizes that. And to be clear, that's not a failure. That's actually the proper way to go about it. If we in the integrated and functional area or lifestyle area of medicine have to recognize that you can't be everything for everyone, that conventional care is still really great at flares or acute issues or lots of great um, resources in the conventional medical world. And so it's dangerous to think that sending someone back to conventional for a workup is a failure. It's not what my wife thought, and I'll get to that in a second, but I just wanted to hammer that home too, that um, we, or she more accurately, kind of creates a transparent atmosphere in her practice where she's not here to replace anybody on their medical team, on their conventional care network of physicians, if they have a home network, or just their primary care provider, if they only have one doctor, that she's really just one part of the overall health. And that's true for everybody. You can't be everything for every patient. You can't be their cardiologist and their brain surgeon and their GI doctor and their endocrinologist. You just can't. Unless you're like, I don't know, Doogie Howser and you've been doing training for the last 30 years in different specialties and you're just brilliant. But most of us aren't Doogie Howser. So you just have to recognize that it's not a failure, and in fact, it's actually encouraged for you to collaborate with their conventional care. But she came into my office and she was down because, you think of yourself as a good professional and you did everything that you know that to do and all your training and all your experience, and this time it's not working. So more so, she was dejected because it was kind of like an ego thing, like, why couldn't I fix it? Or what did I do wrong that this time it's not working again? And so she was staying up at night or not being able to sleep, and she was kind of poring over her notes and the chart and some of her educational materials that she's accessed over the years, and kind of just keeping her up. And she just had some anxiety over this patient who had been with her for a long time. And so because I'm a guy and I really like sports, I kind of set up an analogy for her. And you guys probably know this as well, just I'm going to say it in a sport term. But medicine is just as much art as it is science. And so you can't expect the result to come out, to be spit out of the algorithm, for a computer analogy. We can't expect one input to result in the same output every time, because every biome, every microbiome is different, every individual is different, as you all know. But I likened it to baseball. So I'm a big baseball fan, and a lot of times people that know baseball and watch baseball know that it's a game of failure. So famous quote is, if you fail 7 times out of 10 as a hitter, you go to the Hall of Fame. You're batting 300 for your career, and that's really good, especially nowadays. Same thing, but my analogy was for pitchers. So the best pitchers in the game lose 1,000,000 times. A million's a little bit high, but the best pitchers, Hall of Famers, guys that have been doing it for 20 years, they lose a lot, right? They give up home runs. They give up a lot of runs. They walk people. And so I am impressed by the mindset that it takes to be a pitcher at any level, and let alone a major league level where there's TV and reporters to answer to. And so what I've learned is that a lot of these guys, have learned to focus on the process and what they can control. And so I tried to relate to my wife that as a major league pitcher, you have a routine and you prepare, and pitchers only pitch every 5th day if they're a starter. And so you prepare for 4 days to go out there, and sometimes you don't make it 2 innings. You're supposed to make it maybe 6 or 7. But now you've got to sit there with that kind of failure for 4 more days until your next opportunity. But the actual lesson here is that, really from a more microcosm, is that every pitch is out of their control, really. I mean, they do their windup, they've got all the stats, they've done all the prep work, they've figured it all out. But then as soon as the ball leaves their hand, they can't control what happens to it. So sometimes they throw a bad pitch, and it's a really terrible pitch, and the guy swings and strikes out. Other times they throw the most amazing slider or four-seamer or cutter or anything, and it's just really gross. Like, that's a good thing in baseball. It's really nasty. And the batter is also a good professional, and he hits the ball out of the park as a home run, or he hits it for a double or a triple. And so there's not a lot that you can control as a pitcher after the ball leaves your hand, right? Sometimes it slips, and again, it ends up in a strikeout. Other times it's the best pitch you've ever thrown, and the guy just goes down or goes up and just makes something out of it. And so I tried to relay that message to her, that you need to control what you can control, particularly as a doctor, where you can only do so much. Again, it's not an algorithm where you input one thing at the front end, and on the back end, something predictable comes out. Just like pitchers, you do the preparation and you come up with a strategy and you implement that strategy, but then either sometimes the patient doesn't listen, or just because we're human beings and you're not a god, like, it just doesn't work out for whatever reason. And so this lesson is, try to reduce your anxiety. And I know it's just a sign of caring about your patients, but on some level you have to kind of be open with patients and just say, this is how it works, and sometimes it's more art than science. So we're going to do what we can in our bag of tools, but as we have spoken since the beginning, I am an extension of your medical team. So alternative doctors have to understand, and when I say alternative, that means you functional and integrative medicine doctors. Alternative doctors have to kind of have one part of their brain still looking for and recognizing actual issues that are proper and more appropriate for a conventional workup, and not try to bite off more than you can chew as a conventional, as an alternative doctor with your alternative tool bag or toolkit. And so one takeaway is recognize when it's time to refer to a specialist, in this case GI doc, for a workup. 2 is be transparent with the patients about this limitation. You can't be everything to everyone, it's just not possible. And that sometimes the patient might have that attitude too, like, I don't want to see a conventional doctor. And so you might have to have that conversation with them and say, conventional care isn't bad, right? It's actually really good in situations, and this is one of those situations. So I'm going to refer you to GI, and I really want you to follow up with them because what we've done so far leads me to believe that there's something else going on. So I want you to go do this and either rule it out or find something that you may end up needing conventional care, and that's fine, because conventional care isn't the bad guy, it's not the devil, right? So recognizing when to refer out, talking the patient through that is another one. Understanding that you are limited. I mean, I know you're all really good at what you do, but there are limitations to all of us, and just controlling what you can control. Now, the button on the end of this story is that my wife talked to this patient this morning. My wife's name is Linda Mattioli, but she talked to the patient this morning, and the patient reminded her that when she started at my wife's practice, the patient had colitis and could barely stomach any food, pardon the pun, could barely eat anything or tolerate anything because her colitis was so bad. And so she reminded my wife, Linda, that Linda had done a great job up for the past couple of years, and that sometimes these things happen, and sometimes you need to get to a conventional care when it's appropriate. So all this worry and anxiety was almost for nothing, because what Linda, my wife, was perceiving was that the patient was dissatisfied and upset because we kind of passed her off, and we thought she'd been with us for a long time, and so we kind of now she's under the care of a GI doc. But what Linda kind of viewed as a blow to her ego, the patient recognized as good doctoring, right? So she said, you've really helped me, and I've been able to tolerate lots more foods in the past 2 years since we've been working together, and that sometimes things flare, and sometimes conventional medicine is great. And she's had a lot of other things to say to my wife that were really, really good, compliments about how much she cared and that she's a really good doctor. And so it really kind of came full circle. But what I wanted you to know is that the lessons here are recognize that you can't be everything for everybody. Because where people get in trouble, professionals get in trouble, is when they say, oh yeah, I can take care of that, or let's try this thing, or if that's not working, just continuing to try and not recognize that, oh man, now it's time to do it, to send you out or refer you to somebody else for like a conventional workup. Linda, my wife, did it in time, and she did it in an appropriate amount of time, and it ended up being something that she needed to have, the patient. But you should recognize that. Try what you can. I don't want to tell you to give up, but don't get caught in a spiral where you're swirling and swirling and swirling. And in that amount of time, the patient is foregoing conventional care while you're trying all these other interventions. So as much art as it is science, you also need to recognize your standard of care. So when it becomes a little bit beyond what you can do with your bag of tools, then it's time for maybe prescriptions or conventional interventions and a referral out to somebody else. So control what you can control. You can throw the nastiest curveball ever, but then the guy could hit it 400 feet for a home run. Like that's you can't control that. You just kind of get up there and throw the next pitch, right? For you as doctors, you can do all the interventions and have the patient on board following every direction you give. And for whatever reason, because our bodies are really complex and there's a lot that goes into health, as you know better than me, that it just may not be working. And so it may be time to refer to somebody for a conventional workup to rule out things, or to recognize that something else is going on that maybe you're not able to catch with your tools in your toolkit that a conventional doc might with their MRIs or colonoscopies or anything else that they have up their tool bags or toolkits. So control what you can control, recognize your standard of care, and don't be afraid to refer out to conventional or somebody else that has more experience than you in a particular area, mold, Lyme, heavy metals. Also just be transparent and upfront with the patient and let them know that you don't view conventional as a bad thing, and there may come a time where you're going to refer them to conventional, and that's okay, because you as the functional or alternative or integrative doc are just one more piece of the team. Just like you've got a primary care doc, and then you go to dermatologist, and you go to a cardiologist, and you go to a GI doc. You're just one more in that network, that web of people that have expertise in this area for more chronic issues. And then when it's appropriate, you know when to refer for conventional workups. So I hope that that lands well for you this week and as you go into your weekend. And if you have any questions about your office or what you need to be doing in order to reduce your liability, you can always reach out to me, give a follow, give a like, and we'll see you guys next time.